This time on Watchers of Tomorrow, well, at least the final confrontation is fair.
Hello everyone, welcome to Watchers of Tomorrow, the Star Trek sci-fi review critique show where we're putting the humanities back into science fiction. My name is Gep, and I'm joined as always by my friend and co-host Dr. Izix.
Hi.
And this week, I don't know, it's a religious war, Ocean's 11 sort of thing on an alien planet, and that sounds really interesting, but it's not.
Well, that's just because like 2/3 of the episode is filler. Come on.
It's so filler. I mean, I swear that this thing was just I don't know. I think it was made to just set up. They only had to draw one background. I don't know what to say. I'm struggling to describe it. They had to draw one background that they were on for 90% of the episode.
I'd also maybe make an argument that's like, all right, we need an episode that really gets the kids excited about like action and Star Trek, and so we'll have lava flows. There we go. People will run from them.
Kids love that lava. My kid was out the other day and was just like, oh my god, there's lava. I'm like, nope, that's mud. And he was very disappointed.
He's like, oh, now what excitement are we going to get for the world today? I don't know. I guess we'll have to go and solve the main problem of the episode, I guess.
Yep. All right, this episode is called The Jihad.
Mm-hmm.
Just The Jihad, that's it.
Not the jihad of something, not the jihad for something or other. The jihad, we're going to like introspect for a while sort of thing. Just the jihad.
I don't know how common this was as a word before the 2000s. Like, I encountered it first when I was reading Dune. Then after the 2000s, we started hearing it all the time in very negative contexts. But
indeed,
having grown up as a 90s kid, I don't know what it was like in the 70s.
Yeah, neither do I, because I wasn't alive then. Surprise! But it is a term that has been around, quite some time. Since the 700, 600, something like that. The early times around the formation of Islam, and even earlier, from what I understand, the origins of it go back. But that's kind of when it was like popularized in a certain context. But we could talk about that a bit later. But as far as like Western usage, occasionally popped up, maybe, kind of, but mainly for folks that were like interested in cultures beyond their own, which was actually kind of rare, you know?
In the 70s, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, this episode, we've had this writer before, written by Stephen Candle, who wrote all the Mud episodes.
Yes. This one's a bit different than the Mud episodes. But
for one thing, it doesn't have mud in it.
Yes. They also wrote for a bunch of other things which we mentioned, like The Magician, Mannix, The $6 Billion Man, Shock Trauma, other things we've already mentioned, like MacGyver.
MacGyver's pretty good, so.
Yeah. Well, we do technically have a couple of guest voices.
We do. We have actual guest stars, real live guest stars.
Including David Gerald, who we've actually talked about before as a writer.
Yeah. So wrote The Trouble with Tribbles, the More Troubles, More Tribbles. We've talked about this before. Like, it's going to work on an upcoming episode called BEM, and was the guy, as we covered in the original Trouble with Tribbles episode. I just love it. Worked briefly for Next Generation, but was too edgy.
Well, maybe we could have an alternative timeline where TNG was more edgy.
That would be great. He voices a character named M3 Green.
Yep. Like actual, like you got like slashes between the three of those things as opposed to like other punctuation.
EM/3/green.
Green. So it's like a designation or, I don't know, a registration number. There we go.
I don't know what, yeah. And this is just hilarious to me. The background information on this is both of the women that they normally have on the show were gone this week when they recorded this.
So I gotta have to get somebody else because we have like female characters.
Yeah, so they brought in a voice actor named Jane Webb, who voices a character called Lara, and the Vidalin, who's just another random character here. She did a lot of voice work in radio and transitioned into cartoons, and she just was a voice actor who did a lot of work for Filmation, so she was just one of the people they had around, basically.
Indeed.
She even voiced a version of Batgirl at one point in their thing, so this is the second Batgirl.
Indeed. Barbara Gordon returns in a different form on Star Trek.
Who would have expected to have so many Batgirls in this show?
You see, Star Trek and Batman apparently take place in the same cosmos or something.
Wouldn't surprise me.
Also, she worked on something called Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but not the one most people remember. Not the other one either. The one from the 60s and 70s, yes.
A cartoon based on the comic, but not that one. And
yeah, not the other one.
Yeah.
And so it was a bit of a prolific voice actor during that time period. But apparently, first credit was our leading citizen in 1939, phone operator.
Our leading citizen.
Yeah, I've never heard of that before.
Either. Was that on the radio or is that a cartoon?
I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure it's not a cartoon, but Lem Shafford practices law in a formerly small town that has grown to be an industrialized big city. He bases ideals on the examples set by Abraham Lincoln and never wavers in them. Okay.
Oh my God. It's like propaganda, this show. Okay. Probably the radio.
Right,
Sounds like the radio.
So, divergent from that, back to the episode.
Yes, let's just get started. There's some stuff in here. I don't know. I'm excited. I'm excited to see where this goes, because wow. The Enterprise has been called to rendezvous with a Videllan asteroid.
Yes, just like an asteroid, like you go and be there, and it's like an Earth-like planet, but it's an asteroid.
Yeah.
So.
Apparently the Videla are the oldest spacefaring race.
Yes, that they know of, but yes.
Yeah, except for the ones that came before that we learned about in a couple episodes ago, but they're all extinct, so.
Yeah, they're all dead, so it doesn't matter.
And they say that something incredibly dangerous is happening, and they need the best specialists in the galaxy. And to that end, Kirk and Spock have been called upon, because they're two of the best specialists in the galaxy, apparently.
Yes, Kirk for his leadership ability, Spock for, like, being competent, just generally.
What a freaking like, Spock I could understand. He's, like, the best scientist in the Federation, according to this stuff. But, like, Kirk is the best leader in the galaxy.
Or something. Maybe it's more of a, well, if we take Spock, we have to bring Kirk too. Let's make up an excuse, because otherwise he'll just, like, complain and, like, mess up our plan or something.
They beam to the asteroid to meet with Char the Birdman, who is Prince of Skor, which I guess is the Birdman planet.
Yes. Now, there are different Birdmans technically than the Aurelians, which we saw in yesteryear, but they look almost exactly the same.
They're literally reused characters, but
yes. But they're apparently completely different species. Yes, we had enough. These are just humans, but we call them something different from the original series that we could just do with animation now, I guess.
Also here is M3 Green, the lock-picking bugman.
Yes, apparently he's like a convict, but they're like, well, you're good at your job, so we'll put you like on a work, visa thingamajig over to this asteroid now.
And we have Sword, the lizard,
who does something, but we don't really learn what it does.
Unspecified something.
Miscellaneous.
And Lara, the human tracker, who has an unerring sense of direction.
Well, that's kind of cool. She's also like dressed in like furs and things like that.
Yes.
And so it's like she's like, I'm back to nature, but I can tell all the directions.
Comes out later that she's apparently from some like other human colony that we've heretofore not heard of.
Yeah, well, we have run into situations where like the preservers like kidnapped a bunch of humans and put on another planet, so it could be one of those sort of situations.
Yeah, something like that. We don't know. They are briefed by a character only identified as a Valayan female.
Vidala.
Vidala
Yeah, it's
female.
a little hard to say. And she's a big fluffy kitty.
She is a big fluffy kitty who I don't know how to describe this. I couldn't write it down. So there's a couple times when she's just standing there in a slightly awkward position, but okay, non-human anatomy, and it just talks to them. And then every now and then she needs to use, I guess, some sort of superpower or mind power or something to like conjure a thing. Or at one point she uses that to teleport them to the place they're gonna go. She does a weird cat scream every time. She'll be in the middle of a sentence, and now it's time for you to go.
Okay, then. So I guess it is alien, so I guess we can sort of just do that. Maybe that's like how they communicate with their super powerful, machines or psychic network or whatever in order to cause the effects.
Yeah,
I guess it's not really explained or hinted at. So, alternatively, it's just a all right. This is going to be a pain in the ass. I'm going to scream before I do it so I can focus. There we go.
So their mission, should they choose to accept it, is to go to a geologically unstable planet full of volcanoes, shifting landscapes, and other such dangers, and find the soul of Skor.
Ah, cool. Who's Skor?
This is a religious artifact that holds the brain patterns of Alar, who was a great Skor religious leader who gave them the ways of peace, because apparently they used to just rampage around the galaxy doing wars and such, and then Alar taught them the ways of peace, and then they stored his brain in a sculpture, and now that's the most important thing in their society. But the soul has been stolen, and now as soon as the Skor realize that it's gone, they will start doing war again.
Getting some weird flashbacks to my watch through of the 4th season of Enterprise here. Interesting.
Also, apparently the thing that makes the Skor incredibly dangerous warriors, they breed quick.
So, we're going to have like 200 billion like soldiers in like 2 years if we're sufficiently pissed off. So, yeah.
Being birds, maybe they just have like an egg storage place somewhere, and all they need to do is turn on the incubator, and then in 2 years, like, boom, army.
Yeah, well, that's kind of convenient, really. Wait a moment. Where were these guys during the Dominion War when we were facing, infinite, numbers of clone troopers there?
They had the soul back. So they're all peaceful now.
Oh, all right. So
they're not going to fight.
Guess they, I guess they didn't get involved in that conflict.
So Vidala explains that the danger of the missions, I quote, direct quote, because I loved it. 3 expeditions have tried to recover this. 3 expeditions have been lost. You are next.
Thanks for the vote of confidence.
Like, bye. Also, just the implication here, they bring the best of the best, and they've lost 3 expeditions, which means, like, now Kirk is the best leader in the galaxy, but he was actually 4th down.
All right, well, we managed to get Captain Pike over here, Commodore Pike, and sure he was in his chair thing with Jig, but we got a Telosian to hang out with him just to get him to run around. But now he's gone too, so so I guess we got 2 other people, then Kirk.
It's like, we're the best in the galaxy? You are now.
Hooray!
They all agree to go, and then rawr power, and they all disappear.
For the power of Rar. So we go to the planet where there's not a weather report, but a geology report, right?
Yeah, they are suddenly on the planet in question, also with an open-topped rover sort of thing sold separately.
We got a sweet ride. Yeah.
Kirk sends Char to fly ahead and scout while they break the navigation system in the car.
Whoops. Why did you do that, guys?
Yeah, as far as I can tell, they turn it on and it just explodes immediately. It doesn't matter because Lara can't get lost. It's why she's here.
Yes. So, whatever is killing the computer here is apparently not affecting her. So,
yeah.
Cool.
Also, she really likes Kirk, and she's going to say so because her planet is mostly women. So they tell men when they like them, and she likes him.
Hey, Kirk, do you want to make some green time here?
Yeah, what did that mean?
I think that means, find some bushes and have some fun.
That explains why it's green.
Yes.
Yeah, she refers to it as like, we could have a green time. And he was like, I've had a lot of green times. It's like, oh, you're a man slut.
Well, if it is, again, a planet that's, has a large population of women compared to men, you might kind of expect that to be sort of the common vibe for guys there. If you're only, if you were in high demand, you gotta change your society, perhaps. But so, maybe she doesn't like that, though. Maybe that's why she's here, really.
So Kirk very uncharacteristically wants to stay on mission. When a woman is interested, when he's like hanging out with a 19-year-old, he can't keep his brain on what's on the job.
That's a little awkward. Kirk, you need to, become less creepy.
So they set out in a pouring rainstorm, but just to demonstrate how random this planet is, the sun suddenly comes out. And Char senses the soul nearby in a large gem-shaped building, but since nothing can be that easy, suddenly a lava flow is happening.
Oh no, the lava! It's going to destroy our car.
Yeah. Kirk wants to block it with something. Okay. Spock wants to outrun it by rewiring the car to use all of its battery in one burst, and they decide to do both.
Cool. So let's do both then.
Yeah. I know, no debate, particularly. Kirk, Sword, and Lara run up a cliff to drop large boulders in the path of the lava, which is very conveniently in a narrow canyon that's exactly the width of the 3 boulders that they push down into it, while Spock and M3 Green rewire the rover in a way that's apparently super delicate and finicky, or it will continue to explode.
Well, I guess these are the two that be able to handle that, I guess. Wait a moment. We got basically the perfect setup here. This is a D&D adventure, Captain.
Yeah, it's the party. We've got the prince dude. We've got mage. I guess Spock's the mage, smart guy.
Yeah, he's definitely the wizard.
Yeah. Then M3 Green's the rogue.
Mm-hmm.
Sword, I guess, is your very quiet warrior.
Yeah, he's the fighter. I'm guessing that makes Kirk probably the paladin.
Oh God. Yeah, Kirk paladin, and I guess lawful neutral paladin. And then Lara's the, I guess, ranger. Her pet died, I guess, which is why rangers in 5e are the worst class.
Don't let your big kitty die, unless it has ability to teleport you between planets. Then you don't have to worry about
it. We should do a one-off where we get all the Star Trek people to do Star Trek D&D.
All right, this is technically in D&D, but it's also technically Star Trek. You just don't have any phasers today.
I have half a plan for this, so I've been mulling this over for a while. We'll figure it out.
Yeah, let me know when you want to do that.
So they finish up just in time, get away at full speed from the lava flow, but then they hit the most dangerous thing on the entire planet, a small rock.
Dun dun dun.
The rover jumps, Spock is thrown over the side, and he goes, "Leave me," but Kirk jumps out and saves him, and they stand there, arguing about whether they should save him while the lava moves closer.
You guys could be at least walking casually away.
So they do.
That would be something.
Move and get to high ground just in time for a snowstorm to start.
Well, this should maybe slow the lava somewhat, maybe? Probably not. It's probably just going to create a lot of mist, honestly.
Yeah. So they have to go on foot from here. Sword has to carry M3 Green because he's decided to give up on life.
Yeah. If I was an M3 game, I'd probably be the same.
Yeah, he just lies down and goes like, no, tired, let me die.
This adventure sucks. I'm out of hit points.
We've all played with that guy. They set out towards the building the soul seems to be in. Sword keeps thinking he sees something moving around, but there shouldn't be anything alive on this planet, so maybe his eyes are just playing tricks on him.
Maybe that's his special ability. Really good perception.
They finally approach the building. Lara hits on Kirk again and is shut out. No, Kirk is not interested. Kirk does the hitting on in this party.
Kirk, is totally in love with the Enterprise whenever someone approaches him, but if it's the reverse, then, we'll not worry about the Enterprise today. Mm-hmm.
So M3 Green goes to unlock the door of the giant building thingy, which apparently will explode if he doesn't do it fast enough. Just then, they're attacked by purple pterodactyls.
Yep, again. I know we didn't have this episode, but we've been attacked by these things before.
Yeah, I was joking about starting a counter for these things. But my God.
They just keep coming up. Over and over, reusing the same animation. Like, it's a different background, technically. I don't care. It's still the same animation.
Yeah, purple pterodactyls. Again, one of them, I will say, the one on the vacation planet, the shore leave episode, was a different purple pterodactyl.
Barely.
These ones are just all reused animation.
Hello, critters from the Infinite Vulcan.
So Kirk shoots one and it explodes, which means it's apparently a robot, confirming there's no actual life on the planet. Ha-ha! Gotcha.
It's all just robots, man.
Because that matters.
Yes.
One of them grabs Char out of the air and flies away because they can't shoot or they might hit Char. With the danger gone, M3 Green gets through the door and the rest of the group head inside.
Well, so we're down a party member, but hey, at least we're here, right?
The soul is hanging apparently out of reach in the shot. It looks like it's right there, but apparently it's really high up in the air and they can't get to it.
Yeah, well, it's all an optical illusion. Space is warped, time bendable, that sort of thing, I guess.
So the door shuts behind them, and there's no latch on the inside, so they're trapped. This confirms Kirk's suspicions that he has yet to voice that one of the party has betrayed them, because the expeditions keep failing, and there's no other explanation for why so many expeditions have failed on this super dangerous planet that's almost killed them 5 times.
Yes. Some of those times were due to their own incompetence, so...
Well, I guess this is why you're the 4th group down.
Wait a moment. Is this another case of someone trying to kill off Kirk?
Maybe. So Kirk looks around, goes, oh, these walls are impossible to climb. How are we going to get up there? I know. I'll climb up this wall.
All right. We're just going to do the thing we can't do. Cool.
Mm-hmm. He gets up to there, helps everyone up except for Sword because he doesn't climb.
He's a big iguana guy. He's just going to stand on the ground.
Looking back, I'm pretty sure this is supposed to be a fake out of like, oh, one of them's the traitor. Oh, Sword's not coming along with them. Who could it be?
Well, it could be him who's doing nothing down there, or the guy that's out of sight right now because he got abducted by the robots.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's not hard, people.
So they get close to the soul, and an energy blast hits the wall next to them, confirming Kirk's other suspicion that it was Char the whole time.
Well, if you were suspecting him, why didn't you say that when he was gone? I'm not here to complain about or defend himself.
No, that's not how Kirk rolls.
Well, Kirk maybe was just suspecting everyone, and when he's proven right, he's like, oh yeah, I thought it was him all the time. Yeah.
And then Lara stabs him in the back and goes, haha, this confirms my other suspicion.
Unfortunately, she doesn't do that. She just wants to get laid.
So sure enough, Char flies down and starts monologuing all over them. So he stole the soul because he's the crown prince or whatever of his people, and his people are weak, and they used to be warriors and not all peaceful. So now he stole the soul and kept it hidden from them so that when they figure it out, they'll be mad and start going to war again. but then he teamed up with these guys to get it back. Several teams of them, in fact, it sounds like. So was he on the team every time and just came back alone? Was like, oh, sorry. What happened here?
Did find it. Sorry. Oh, it would have been nice if the Vidalians had mentioned that.
Guess we have to keep hiding it from my people, who will totally find out one day, which is my plan. Anyway, they're all going to die noble deaths for a great purpose to take over the galaxy, and it's great. It's the best.
We're gonna have infinite war forever, and you should be proud of that, guys. Come on.
And the grim darkness is the far future. He turns on an anti-gravity field so that everyone can fly like the score do and fight with bird honor.
So I guess at least it's a fair fight today, I guess.
Except it's not, because this isn't flying, it's anti-gravity, and Kirk and Spock have Starfleet anti-gravity combat training.
Yeah, they know how to push off objects and headbutt things, I guess.
Yeah. They grab Char's wings. Kirk then hooks his foot around the sole and calls for an exit.
All right, we got operators, the people on the Nebuchadnezzar, bringing you out of there. Just, do you have a phone nearby? No? Okay, I guess we'll just teleport you out.
Earlier, they were like, hey, we're here, and it was a long, hard journey. And they're like, well, don't get comfortable. We still have to walk back. Now, they have a button that teleports them out immediately.
Well, maybe they were expecting that they'd get teleported to the wrong place on the asteroid or something like that, maybe, and have to walk back on there. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a bit they cut out, was them having to walk all the way across the asteroid.
Thankfully, it's only an asteroid, and so it's low gravity, other than the gravity enough to have an atmosphere. Yeah, this doesn't make any sense.
So Videla brings them all back. Job done. Char will be re-educated so that he stops being crazy and warmongery, and then sent back to his people. All fine and dandy.
I don't know. That seems like a huge violation of his personal autonomy there, myself.
Yeah.
Sure, he kind of sucks, but really? You get to reprogram him?
So they're all returned to where they started, and no one's going to remember what happened eventually. Their memories will fade. Everyone's not going to know that they did this. It's just too dangerous of a mission.
Because if anyone ever found out that this was the thing that happened, it would be disaster for everyone.
War. Laura
also, we can't
says one last goodbye to Kirk before they all disappear. They head back to the transporter room, where Sulu is confused because they were only gone a couple of minutes. And Kirk confirms that the Videla didn't actually need them because the danger's done. So they changed their minds.
Well, that's useful. What are we gonna do now? We were good planning hang out over this asteroid for a week while you get your stuff sorted out.
Yeah, now they're just gonna leave and go on to the next thing, I guess. Shore leave? I don't know.
We already did shore leave this season. I don't know. Cut to the next season. It'll be a long one for sure, won't it?
Actually, is the next one the next season? This might be technically the last episode of the first season.
Yes. There are 6 more episodes after this, and they're all season 2.
Yeah, even though it doesn't really matter because there's only 6 episodes, so it's not much of a season.
The shortest season of Star Trek ever.
Anyway, since you brought this up and it was near the end, this is something that we had the chance to talk about this a couple times with their prison episodes, but I think it's pretty well demonstrated here. Their whole anyone who disagrees with us is mentally ill and we can fix that is a bit troubling.
Yes.
So there are some ideas. I think probably the most well-known and famous people who wrote along these lines was Foucault, but it's not an uncommon philosophical idea that the way that a society defines mental illness is really a definition of people who do not fit well within the framework of that society. And the entire idea that you can then fix them so that they fit back into the framework of the society is saying some interesting things, namely that the society itself functions to enough of a degree that everyone should be forced to live inside of it, and that anyone who doesn't live outside, who then lives outside of the arbitrary boundaries that you have set, is sick enough that they need to be addressed in order for their standard of living to be okay, or for them to not be dangerous.
Yes. I don't really got a good thing to follow up on that there, other than there is, I guess it is very limiting, and it does discourage thinking, thinking that is going to be pushing the edges of that society to cause it to be unsubtle enough for changes, one way or the other. I'm not going to evaluate what those changes are going to be, but if someone is not feeling well with society, it may be because there is actually something fundamentally wrong with the society and not the person. And so you can very easily run into a situation where there is a general problem that is being actively ignored because it's being oppressed by this sort of arbitrary, all right, we're going to make sure everyone fits into society one way or another sort of vibe.
You wind up with a bit of an issue that if there's something harmful that's happening in the society, but it's happening to everyone, and some people, for whatever reason, are in a position where they are harmed by it less, you then define the people who are harmed by it more as mentally ill and try to fix them. But everyone is actually being harmed by this thing. You're just using the fact that some people are harmed more basically to justify the fact that this should exist.
In some ways, it's a bit of treating the symptom and not the cause.
Which is a lot of what we do with these things. And the kind of definitional problem that you get into when you're talking about mental illness is it's defined by societal norms. And that is how you wind up in situations like how until quite recently being homosexual or transgender was considered a mental illness that you would be treated for. And the way that they talk about it, if you listen to interviews of people who, like, there are still people who are working therapists who defend this because they say that people come to them and tell them that the fact that they are homosexual is causing them pain in their daily life because it is something that's not accepted in society.
And so instead of, offering up a option of like, well, maybe screw society here, or, maybe the society that you are participating in is unhealthy for you, and maybe you should seek a situation or a life pattern where you're going to avoid those elements. No, we're going to instead try to force who you are to be different in order to conform. And that can be quite painful and just make the problem worse.
Yeah, but you can see the argument because you've wound up in a situation where the way you are treated because you are considered different from the mainstream society is causing you pain. So a way to fix that is to get you to conform to mainstream society so that other people will stop treating you badly. Like, it is a way to fix the problem that you came in with. Like, it definitionally fits a mental illness, which is why it was considered one for so long.
And of course, there's that whole, suicide rate, even with folks that are trying to sort of go this path here, that maybe suggests that, I don't know, this idea of this being a valid, method of solving the problem is not necessarily doing what it's being sold as.
Well, the reason that this changed is because there was a concerted political effort by a lot of activists who were saying, no, this isn't causing us a problem except for the fact that we are being treated badly. And
yes,
they weren't taken seriously for a long time. They had to keep going to conferences and meetings and other things, and eventually they finally got some therapists to actually listen to them and hang out with them enough that they realized that being homosexual was not ruining their lives intrinsically, and they were able to change it in the next version of the DSM. But this was a political change. They weren't looking at any actual evidence of outcomes or things, because when you have a negative outcome in something like therapy, they usually consider it a failing on the part of the person who they're trying to change because they're just not trying hard enough, or their disease is too great and they are untreatable. There's all kinds of ways that the system self-reinforces and just becomes like its own mechanism for enforcing the societal norms.
Yeah, I'm having the vision of that one bit of The Simpsons there where it's like, am I out of touch? No, it's the children who are wrong.
Yeah. I know when I talk like this, I can come off as very, very negative towards the entire idea of therapy or mental illness. And I think that there is a definite balance to strike here, because there are situations where someone is in a bad place for themselves and they need help to address that in a certain way that they can get from something like therapy or even, medication, as down as I am on some of these ideas overall. But we have to be very careful and look into the power structure here, because it's something that goes unexamined a lot of the time. If you go to therapy with a problem, the person who is your therapist gets to define what is normal and how you should be acting in accordance to that.
Which is putting a lot of trust into them. And so it is very important to make sure that you are getting into a relationship there with someone that is worthy of that trust, who is able to see that, as if this is a case of, this person's just kind of being, crapped on because of who they are, versus, no, this is somebody who is actually, suffering, and, independent of what the sort of outside world's doing, there's some fundamental thing that we should be working on and restructuring. And, it's something that is very much you need to be going into this with this sort of, understanding of this dynamic in order to find the person that's going to work well for what your needs are.
And this becomes a bit of an issue. I have spoken to so many therapists who will not examine this power dynamic. They don't want to admit that a power dynamic exists. They don't want to look into this idea that they get to define reality. We are very in this science-ifying of therapy mode right now, where everything is supposed to be like evidence-based outcomes is the kind of key phrase. And when you are able to look at something in that kind of way, you're able to say, well, it's been scientifically proven that this is the case. And I mean, if you actually look at the way that they do these studies and examine outcomes, there's a lot of problems with it. It's a soft science to begin with, so using it as very, very hard data doesn't make sense, but it is also kind of just reinforcing the problem where people don't want to engage with this core philosophical issue that is kind of at the heart of therapy and needs to be looked at.
As someone with a bit more of a hard science STEM background, it is very important, even in the so-called hard sciences, to be actively skeptical of people's work and studies and things like that. And it's like, even if they appear to be doing everything correct, to go through when you're having a look to make sure that everything that they're doing actually makes good sense and isn't missing some important fundamental aspects here. Because if you just kind of take everything at their word, it's like, oh yeah, we did a thing and then we did the results and this totally means this, then that can very easily lead to a series of ill-formed conclusions, which could throw everything off for decades on end. And that's just kind of horrible. And that's with like physics, which, people say is one of the more harder sciences there. But still, you have to have this, even on that sort of extreme, having a very healthy amount of skepticism all the time is important. And when you're going to something where it's a lot more, there's a lot more, subjectivity, like, psychology, it's even more needed because, there is so much more to be skeptical about because there is so much we don't know about. And so to sort of, say that, oh, we're turning this into hard science, like, all right, that doesn't mean you can get away with being lazy on this front.
Well, that's what's so weird. There's things that can be looked at scientifically and should be, but there's also stuff that fundamentally cannot be. It just doesn't fit into the scientific framework that we use. While I understand that science is very important, I'm very up on science. I'm not trying to downplay how important research and scientific thinking is. the fact that something cannot be measured scientifically doesn't mean it's unimportant or doesn't exist.
Yes.
Because you can't actually look at a lot of things that therapy is dealing with scientifically because it's all internal experiences. You can't disprove someone's mood. And if you can't disprove something, you cannot use the scientific method to observe it.
The best you can sort of do is to assume that they are both feeling it and not feeling it, and then do, take up a line of action or reasoning or argument that is going to either make that marginally irrelevant, which is kind of a jerk move, or that will allow them to, that will give them the best output, independent of which one those are, or you can make an educated guess and try and pick one and try to go forward, and then you might be completely wrong, and then you could be doing a lot of harm in the process. And so there's a lot of, I guess, evaluation and choices you can sort of get up to there that is going to be, set up in a fashion that there is risk and there is not really much scientific judgment or pattern making or whatever you can sort of apply here, because this person's kind of an individual and you don't know fully what's going on inside. So
yeah, and I think the important thing to look at is just because you cannot prove or disprove someone's mood doesn't mean it's unimportant, which is something that we get into. I heard this story recently where recently a book was published about what they're calling the compassion crisis in health, where doctors lack empathy, like provably lack empathy, and it's causing a lot of outcome problems because you can see that the more comfortable and compassionate a doctor is around a patient, the better the health outcomes. But people were talking about it like it didn't matter until they found a way to quantifiably study it. But instead of just looking at it and going like, treating someone well could be a thing to do, maybe in and of itself, whether or not we can prove scientifically that it increases outcomes. Like, why are we arguing to treat people badly?
We really shouldn't be doing that, guys. It's kind of a jerk move. Also, people generally feel better if they're not being treated like a car at a shop.
Yeah, but can you prove it with science? Because otherwise, I don't want to hear it. It doesn't matter. Get your soft science out of here. It's all squishy.
So, long story short, don't be a jerk, and people will like what's going on better, and that may help people. So, just sort of general, this is something that's been kind of demonstrated throughout history, not just today in the most recent study. So
I spent longer on that than I meant to. Just was something I've been thinking about recently and happened to line up. Another thing, let's jump from one horribly controversial topic that if we had more viewers would get some comments about to religion. That's fun.
Jihad?
Well, we could do Jihad, but the basic premise, we should talk about Jihad, but the basic premise of this episode, which is somewhat interesting, I don't want to delve too deep into it because they're doing a very surface level thing here, and there's a lot to get into on this particular topic, but the basic premise that they're working with this episode is that religion is some sort of thing that exists to control, I guess, the natural impulses of a society. Because the implication here is that the natural impulse of this particular society is to be warlike and violent. This religion is preventing them from doing so, to the point that them discovering the loss of a religious artifact would cause them to become warlike again.
Yeah, this is a very... Okay, if this was as deep as your belief in this religion goes, then that kind of makes a big question of, do you actually believe it, or are you using this as an excuse not to go all murder hobo on us?
Yeah, it is an interesting one that you don't seem to have fundamentally taken in the core aspects of your religion. You're just not doing war because you have a shiny object.
Yes. Which, if your faith in your belief is this shallow, maybe it's not really religion. It's more of a agreement, I guess.
Yeah, as long as we have this thing, we agree to not do war.
Okay, cool. Should we call it the contract? No, we're going to call it the covenant and pretend it's a religion. Okay,
that does seem to be the difference.
So, I guess if you sort of view it as a very surface level covenant sort of thing, it kind of works, but it's like, all right, well, this is more of a you just have to have this and everything works out sort of thing. I'm kind of at a loss to how this fake religion actually is supposed to work.
Yeah.
Other than there's something about don't murder everyone. Unless I'm not here, I guess.
But there is a kind of thing, like this is both something that's argued both on the pro-religious and anti-religious side, which I find kind of interesting. People who are advocating for not religion per se, but more religion as a guiding principle of society, will make arguments like the only reason that people don't murder someone is because religion says it's wrong. And people who are more on the anti-religious side will make the same argument but then say that's stupid.
So, I guess the $64,000 question on this front is, what is morality and where does it get derived from?
Yes, which people have been arguing for years.
Oh, more than years.
I mean, I think personally there's a very weird tangle effect because, as we've talked about, the Ouroboros of pop culture, we also have a very Ouroboros-y sort of society generally. You probably start with some very innate, inbuilt moral ideas that just are there because that's something that we see in a lot of social species. There's pro-social behaviors that allow a species to be social, and humans as a social species have developed a set of pro-social behaviors. Those behaviors are then interpreted as either morals or guidelines or laws or religious values, which then further reinforce certain aspects of those and de-emphasize other aspects of those, which then lead to societal evolution along certain lines, which reinforces and de-reinforces them over the course of history, and la-di-da, there we go.
All right, so we're starting with this basic core thing was like, oh, we can sort of notice that this person over here is not trying to kill us. Maybe we could like, you do something together that makes both our lives less awful. And then, a few thousand years later, hey, we have a society.
Mm-hmm. You wind up with certain things that you've demonstrated in most social species, like a value for sharing, an ability to hold a grudge. Things that evolutionarily make sense for the development of social behaviors and cooperation, and things that would make a social species advantageous. And then you can kind of extrapolate those. Like the fact that we tend to dislike hurting each other makes sense from a social species aspect, because if you hurt another individual in your social group, they are harmed and therefore can do less to contribute to the group's survival as a whole.
So I guess maybe the $64,000 question then is a technical one and not a philosophical one in that case. Though there is plenty of opportunity to reinforce that technical derivation via a social one, a religious one, a philosophical one. It's like, all right, so we need, we feel like for whatever reason we need to have more backup for this because, being our limited selves here, fully understanding the, processes of how societies develop is not necessarily something that we can all sort of contain into our, our heads, because either a lack of education, we just haven't been exposed to the ideas at all or ever. So we kind of have to produce these elements that are going to provide the basic reasoning explanations like, oh yeah, so this does make sense given X, even if X is just, whatever we decide it is today. and various societies kind of have various different sort of starting places there, and that's fine.
Yeah, you wind up in I forget what it was called. There's a common term for this. It's basically the unperformable experiment, which is the core problem that you run into with human behavior. You cannot raise a human outside of a social context. Therefore, you can never decouple innate human behavior from societally learned human behavior.
So, we'll put someone on the moon.
They will die.
All right, well, yeah, they will die. All right, so we have to put them in the capsule. All right, well, what? How do we design this capsule? Because this is going to be affecting them in some fashion.
Well, so you wind up with a problem. We are such a social species that not only are our young 100% dependent on others to survive for years, but being left alone with no social interaction does not create a default human. It creates a maladapted human who does not exhibit normal human behaviors, because not having social interaction is so bad for people that leaving them alone for too long causes them to die.
Like, well, I'm missing something fundamental for my life. I'm not operating correctly anymore. I guess I'm just going to die then.
Yeah, humans are one
sucks.
of the most social species on the planet. It is probably our sole major evolutionary advantage if you want to look at things that way. Like the very fact that we need so much social interaction makes it fundamentally impossible to separate innate and socialized behavior as much as we want to try. You just can't. There's no way to separate out societal influence on behavior, no matter what that behavior is.
So maybe we should stop trying.
Yeah, there is no way to know what is fundamentally innate human behavior, fundamental differences, anything. You just can't. So stop talking about fundamental anything. There is no innate human anything.
I guess for anyone of the STAM variety is tuned out, you got a quantum system that you can only measure inside an environment. Otherwise, your Schrodinger equation is ill-defined, because you always have to have you're trying to look at your fine structure here, and if you don't have an external magnetic field, you're not going to see it. Come on.
Yeah, that made some kind of sense to someone.
So maybe something a little more approachable before we get to the last segment here. Do you want to talk about Jihad at all?
Yeah, we probably should. To use an overused quote, I don't think that word means what you think it means.
Exactly. The sort of core basic translation from Arabic means either striving or struggling, and sometimes kind of both at the same time. And so this doesn't, in the West, the popularized version is like, oh yes, someone's on jihad, and that means that they're going to war and trying to take over North Africa. Or something
either
like that.
A religious war or some kind of religious vendetta death cult sort of thing.
Yeah. And that's a very, very, very limited sort of definition of what it is, when it can mean a lot more different things. For instance, there is, sort of the, quote, greater or inner jihad, which is all about the internal struggles. Trying to become a more moral person, a more, sort through your internal conflicts, and to seek a more harmonious sort of life and a better version of yourself. And this is seen as sort of the morally more, I guess, maybe we shouldn't sort of define it as more of anything, but more of a purer version, I guess, in a certain way. But there is still the external sort of jihads, where you're trying to solve some sort of problem, and you could either do it through, say, debate, like you're going to make an argument. It's like, we need to accomplish this goal, so I'm going to go out there into the world and talk to people and try to convince them that this is something that we should be doing. So I'm going to struggle. I'm going to strive for this outcome, and there's no violence involved with this at all. And so the sort of westernized version, where it's the jihad equals war, is leaving out a lot of stuff here, and that's kind of unfair, I guess, because it also means that if someone is from an sort of the outside viewer, has very little normal contact with the Arabic world, runs into someone who's talking about jihad, that might instantly jump to, oh, this person's a terrorist or some bullshit. But they're actually talking about their internal struggles with, say, some sort of addiction. I don't know.
It sounds pretty analogous to if you, in English, were to completely conflate conflict and war.
Yes. I have a conflict with my brother. So you're trying to kill each other? No, disagreeing over what kind of pizza to get. What's wrong with you? And so it's very much there's the Hollywood version, and then there's the actual what's actually this is, but because the West English speaking world has traditionally not had a lot of direct contact with the Arabic world, is to sort of have this be a concept that is well understood in a very cross cultural sort of means, except in moments when we're having militarized conflict. It's very much tainted the term, especially in the post 9/11 world, the post Iranian Revolution world, and so basically, after this episode was made, it became a lot more controversial just a few years later, and then way more controversial later due to world events that are going on.
And it definitely plays into a lot of the Islamophobia that we're dealing with today. Also, interestingly, it ties into a concept that we've talked about a couple of times, which would be Orientalism, where the Western scholars, and in this case more the Western media, get to define something about an Eastern, or in this case Middle Eastern culture, being, we've now redefined this word, which in a religious context means something akin to struggle or conflict, into scary, scary holy war.
Yes.
Not just war, but scary holy war. Unjustified holy war.
They're coming for your kids and all that, and you better, donate all your time to supporting the troops, or else everything will be terrible, and you'll all die from WMDs or something like that. Yeah. And to a certain degree, even like, centuries back, medieval scholars, Renaissance scholars on forward, the folks that, in the West that are at all talking about, Islam or the Arabic world in general, their understanding of the term was also very limited. And so it sort of pre-primed the Western world to not understand what the heck's going on. It's just one of those lingering problems that is of misunderstanding that is, consistent and unfortunate. And so, here on Watches of Tomorrow, once again, it's good to demystify something that is not well understood.
Yeah, if you can define even some base terms, like this is not an uncommon word that would be used in many religious contexts. So being able to define it as, anytime this word is used, it's scary and you should be scared, is a very fundamental propaganda technique to very vilify in a culture, which is pretty wrong. We should stop doing that.
Though I will say that there is sort of the inverse to a certain degree of the term crusade, that, someone can go on a crusade of social justice in the West, but in other parts of the world, that's gonna be like, oh, you're going to invade us and take over Lebanon or something like that. Could you not do that, please?
That is interesting. That's a interesting point.
Yeah, but as someone who's not from any of those parts of the world, I can't speak too much on the subtleties of how it's sort of viewed from that side of things. So it is something I've picked up from interacting with folks with better backgrounds on that front.
Oh, who would have thought that we would have gotten to 3 separate depressing things from this episode?
But the jihad of the tongue is and the pen is something that's very can be a force for good in the world. Like, hey, people aren't being like charitable enough. We should like change that. So I'm going to go out there and and say, hey, this is something we're kind of failing at. Let's like fix that. So that can be a good thing,
Yeah, it's not bad. But who's ready to stop being depressed?
I am.
So it's time for the Galaxy's favorite game show. Woo!
Hey everybody, welcome to the game show portion of the show. I hope you're having a wonderful time here, and we're going to get to rocking our various prizes here. Everyone's been getting a lot of points here, in fact, experience points. I'm not sure how they translate to prizes, but we got some to hand out anyway. Our first prize goes out is to a couple folks here, the TV Love Story prize, which goes to Kirk and Laura. Though Laura clearly wants this TV love story to not be the kind that fits well with children's TV in the 70s. What do they win, Gepwin?
They win a full expense-paid trip to Floston's Paradise with Ruby Rod. Green?
Woo! Excellent. I'd love to go on to such a vacation myself, provided we don't get any Mandalarks or whatever those guys with the face change thing going on here. That would just maybe ruin the whole day. Our second prize is the Adventure Party prize, which goes to Kirk, Spock, and the rest of our group of experts who are literally on a quest to find a thing. Some sort of magical MacGuffin here, so they're basically an adventuring party. What do they win, Gepwin?
Kirk gets at least 2 points of inspiration to roll advantage. I don't see any other way he's pulled any of this off. He's very good at arguing for advantage to the DM.
So, Kirk, you're going to better use those inspiration points quick, because we only got 6 more episodes of the series left to go. Whoa.
I really hope everyone who listens to this plays 5th edition, because otherwise that's just...
So, our third one is the Sufficiently Advanced Aliens prize, which goes to the Vidalans for their ability to apparently manipulate time, and given the entire adventure takes place within apparently minutes on the Enterprise, that kind of works out. Unless, of course, Sulu is, should actually go and see McCoy because he just had a lengthy seizure or something like that. That's maybe the more depressing version of what's going on here, but we're going to say that the Vidalans are actually just manipulating time. What do they win, Gepwin?
The Vidalans win some big, lazy something. I mean, they shouldn't win anything because they could solve this entire problem. What is wrong with them? Why do they need people? Why do they need anything for anyone for anything if they can do these sorts of things?
You forget, Gepwin, they're actually just giant kitties.
That's true. They're giant cats, so they're incredibly lazy.
Yes.
So I guess they just get a laser pointer. That's what they were doing the whole time. Or possibly a cardboard box to sleep in while they make other people do their work.
For sure they weren't just hanging out in the cardboard box the whole episode anyway?
Probably.
Our final prize is the Rejecting Surak prize, which goes to Jar for being part of a movement or something to reject the piece of philosophy as people have adopted, I guess, and by, saying, I want to go kill everybody. What does he win, Gepwin?
Apparently, Char's won forced religious re-education, because that's something that we think is fine.
Apparently, I'm guessing they're probably not Federation members. Otherwise, there might be some, I don't know, basic Federation charter stuff to be worrying about. And also the Vidalans are doing it, so I guess there's no Prime Directive issue either. Still awkward, though. Get us out of here, Gepwin, please.
Yeah, we made it depressing again. Which is not the point, so thank you all for joining us here on the Galaxy's favorite game show! Woo!
So, are you struggling for the next episode?
Oh yeah, we're struggling for the next episode. we're almost done. This is actually the first episode of season 2, since it's only a 6-episode season. Like we said before, there's no reason to not just forge ahead and through.
So, apparently Spock gets sick.
Yeah, Spock gets sick. The next episode is called "The Pirates of Orion," which
Orion.
is it? They don't pronounce it that way. I thought it was Pirates of Orion too, and then I was like, oh, it's the Orions, the green people.
Is it?
No.
Somebody else.
Because they don't pronounce it Orion. I was just looking at this. It's Orion.
Or, wait a moment, are they hallowed?
Hallowed all the Orion.
Yeah, these guys do kind of look different than the Orions, so maybe that's just a coincidence that the name's spelled the same. But we're not those jerk faces.
Yeah, so no, it's not Pirates of Orion. It's Pirates of Orion. Which is just deeply confusing.
We're for reals completely different guys. It's no problem here.
We're definitely different. Don't pay any attention over here. So yeah, Spock is sick. They need to find a cure, apparently, and they cannot escape or something or other. There's pirates. There's something. This is a voice. There's a Orion captain voiced by James Doohan.
That's per usual.
As it goes.
He's playing at least 5 people this next episode. All right.
Yeah, lots of people.
So I guess we'll try to get some drugs for Spock next week.
Yes, Spock needs drugs. Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow.
Next time on Watchers of Tomorrow, drugs are in high demand. You have been listening to Watchers of Tomorrow, a podcast on science fiction media. Find and follow Watchers of Tomorrow on Podbean, YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, Pocket Cast, Spreader, Digital Podcast, and perhaps many more to come. If you enjoy our podcast, make sure to subscribe for more. And where possible, make sure to rate your experience or leave us a review. You may find Gepwin on youtube.com/Gepwin and Twitter @Gepwin. You may find me, Dr. Isix, on youtube.com/Dr. Isix and Twitter @IsixLP. Music is Waveform and Mori's Principle, both by DRKRN. You can also check out the Watchers of Tomorrow Discord channel. Make sure to share the experience with your friends, family, enemies, and alien overlords. If you feel you are suffering from transporter syndrome, please be aware that the next time you step off the transporter, that you, that is now, no longer exists.